We got a tweet from the National Guard saying, "To our neighbors, this is not a threat of martial law. If you see a Maryland National Guard Humvee on your street, know we are helping someone in need, whether it's delivering much-needed supplies or setting up tents for health screening stations." And you know, that's the one advantage to having the National Guard is you can mobilize them for that kind of purpose. You can't. It's very difficult to get that kind of manpower without it. So, you know, there's two sides to that story, I think.
I see also, though, in California, we've got reports of neighbors calling 911 on neighbors that are coughing too loud or sneezing too loud. Fox News also reported some police departments in California, Jim, actually using drones to enforce this lockdown, in addition using drones to monitor the homeless population. Chula Vista Police Department reportedly just purchased two $11,000 drones that will be outfitted with speakers in order to give commands to people below, night vision cameras. I mean, what are we coming to with this?
No, that truly is creepy, and that is also, I think, once again, exploiting a crisis.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is that the whole crisis strategy, it starts with Machiavelli, and then it goes to Karl Marx, and it's the dialectic. First you have the thesis, which is the current condition, and then you have the antithesis, which is the crisis that they create. For example, you know, can you not say that Los Angeles homeless situation, San Francisco's outdoor toilet situation are not crises created by the left?
Yeah.
These are crises created by the leadership who not only allow this stuff, they promote it and celebrate it. It's absolutely insane. And so you have this massive homeless crisis in Los Angeles caused by their open borders sanctuary state policies. And now they have to respond with this heavy-handed government intervention now that we're in the middle of a crisis. And I agree with you. This could turn into, you know, the daily routine living in that state. No wonder that state is hemorrhaging people like crazy.
Jim, we also have various political leaders that are urging the president to make full use of the Defense Production Act, to take over businesses, to order certain businesses, manufacturing companies, you must start manufacturing X, Y, or Z product. We're seeing this happen from people in the media, certainly questioning him on this. We're seeing some units of government that are asking the president to go so far to do that. Give us your response.
Well, you know, I mean, they use that during wartime, and I think in certain, I hate to say that it's justifiable, but sometimes if there's a shortage of things like, for example, these respirators, which are critical for this disease, I think that maybe it's warranted. However, it should be warranted. It's a kind of thing where, you know, when the government comes in.
And let me just interject, because yesterday, I mean, this very scenario came up in the president's news conference, and the president was referring to the private sector, the businesses, that without ordering companies, the businesses, we had one business, and I can't tell you what corporation it was, but they said, hey, we made these ventilators in the past. We're going to retrofit to start making these ventilators again. Another who said, we're going to step forward and we're going to start making masks. And so he's seeing this happen from the private sector taking place, while the media is pressing him to, you know, order factories to do X, Y, or Z.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing, you know, you get normal America, you get real America coming together in a crisis voluntarily to do these things. And then you have the Democrats who say, oh, no, this is something that should be mandated. This is a power that we should have. Because the Democrats, and I don't even like to say Democrats, because there's a lot of voters out there who are Democrats that I don't think agree with any of this. But the leadership, which has been taken over assuredly by the extreme left, has two goals, and no other goals. Two goals. One is power, and two, wealth for themselves. Those are their two goals. They don't care what happens to anybody else, anything else. Those are their goals, and you can apply that to any of the agendas they push, any of them. And if you look at it closely, you'll see in every case, this is the only upside, and it's only an upside to them. It gives them more power, and it gives them control over our resources, which inevitably leads to them becoming wealthier at our expense. You know, you have Dianne Feinstein, you know, her dropping those stocks after that private conference headed by Senator Richard Burr, who should resign also, dropping, selling millions of dollars worth of stock using insider information. But what most people don't know is that Dianne Feinstein, position on the Appropriations Committee and other committees, has steered millions and millions of dollars to her husband's defense contractor. You know, how legal is that? And why isn't that? Has that never come forward? Why has she never been called on that? And why has she so escaped scrutiny for having a Chinese communist agent on her staff for decades?
Jim Simpson, our guest here today on Crosstalk, and friends, our topic today, never let a crisis go to waste. We're up against a break. We're going to take the break, and we're going to find out from our guest here today, who, by the way, is running for Congress, where we are right now, what is the path forward. If you'd like to start getting online right now, our telephone number to Crosstalk is 800-733-9829. That's 800-733. Take your questions today or brief comments, 800-733-9829. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America.
What will the world look like in the last days? One significant clue the Bible offers is a fascinating look at the New Babylon. More than 1/10 of the book of Revelation is devoted to prophecies about this city, the Antichrist world government. In the book New Babylon Rising, trusted prophecy expert Ron Rhodes offers insight into what God's Word tells us about the worldwide influence of New Babylon in the end times. You will discover the rampant paganism and evil that will mark this city, the forthcoming time of great tribulation, the coming cashless society, and you'll see how prophecies presented in the Old Testament will be fulfilled. You will discover that no matter how uncertain the future looks, you can have peace knowing that God is in full control. New Babylon Rising, available for a donation of $17 or more from VCY America. Call 1-800-729-92.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. Jim Simpson is a former economist and budget examiner for the White House Office of Management and Budget. He served under Presidents Bush, that'd be Bush 41, and also President Reagan, President Clinton. And with us here today, we're on the topic, never let a crisis go to waste. Our lines are packed. We'll get to your calls in just a moment. But Jim, as you see where things are right now in this nation, dealing with this crisis, this COVID-19, and the response that we're seeing from the White House, we're seeing individual responses coming from various states. Some have said, hey, what's good for a large metropolitan area may not be as effective for a small rural area in parts of states. But as you see the big picture here of where we are as a nation on this issue, this battle going forth in Congress, what do you see as the path forward if you were the one this nation through this time of peril?
Well, to be honest with you, I think President Trump has taken the right path on this. I mean, the Democrats have politicized it so much that it's really difficult to know if this is actually critically essential right now or not. But given the political situation and its lethality, I think his very measured, his response is good. And I would, who can predict what'll happen, but we have about 1%, which is similar to what the 1918 Spanish flu are tested. But so far, anyway, the growth in cases and growth in deaths has pretty much tracked at about 1% or maybe a little more. Experts that I've read, and once again, we are at a disadvantage to know how accurate any of this information is because we don't really know what the outstanding cases are out there. But supposedly, 2 people are infected for every person that becomes infected. So it's a 2-to-1 infection rate, and Spanish virus infection rate was 1.3 for every person infected. So it seems to be highly infectious. And so these things are all serious concerns, and as the data comes in and as the numbers grow, I think we'll have a better handle on it. But I also think in anticipation of that, it was good to get behind this now because perhaps we can begin to see the curve flattening out and coming down, and I think we will. I don't think there's any way for other things to happen. We follow directions and, avoid, keep social distancing and avoid unnecessary travel and things like that. I think we will begin to see this fall, and my hope is that we'll be able to get back to normal in a couple of weeks or a month. President Trump reiterated that today in a tweet when he said that we are going to reassess. This is not going to be something that's ongoing. If we can avoid it, we would like to keep this as short as possible.
Yeah.
So we should follow the guidance being put out by the White House.
Let's go. John calling in from South Milwaukee. John, you're on the air.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm wondering if we aren't getting to some type of a socialism, which I'm sure the Dems would love, because of the Boeing. They couldn't fly the 730 MAX. Now all of a sudden we're giving them money. The airlines were giving them money. The cruise ships were giving them money. They're talking $2 trillion. I don't even know how many zeros that is.
Yeah.
The other thing is, real, we're saying, we're going to have a recession. Now you got one. Hope you're happy. I'll shut up and thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Okay. So, I think we're all concerned about the size of that quote-unquote stimulus. The one thing I will say about it is that unlike if you recall the Obama quote-unquote stimulus, the only thing that related was Democrats. Of that almost $1 trillion stimulus package that they passed in 2009, only $40 billion of that was dedicated to, quote, shovel-ready jobs. And then when it was all said and done, they acknowledged that, well, I guess those shovel-ready jobs weren't so shovel-ready after all because they only wound up devoting $5 billion of it to that. The rest went to all these quote-unquote green energy programs and everything else, all of which but fertilizer for the Democratic Party, nothing else.
And some of the proposals that are coming forth here are building government, a lot of the dollars going to the bureaucracy rather than to the specific areas of need.
Right. No, and that's it's indisputable,
Yeah.
and I think that unfortunately, and I'm not going to defend him on this, but I think jumps over a barrel in some cases, and that if he wants to get anything, he's going to have to make some kinds of compromises that will, of course, give the Democrats at least some of what they want, which is nothing more than taking this opportunity to give themselves a whole bunch of new money, which they will then turn around and use for their own purposes. And, the caller, John, is right. There's the thing that frightens me about this, in addition to the fact that it's so big, is that it sets a precedent. What happens next year when we get some kind of flu virus? Is everything going to go on lockdown again because some people might die? There's a potential for a lot of deaths in the United States from this. But right now, there's 504 compared to, I think, 11,000 or something, or 19,000, I forget what it was, for the influenza last year. And, up to 50 or 60,000 deaths from influenza every year.
Yes.
So making this a priority here, to me, it risks having similar kinds of things every year. And if a Democrat is elected in November, it will become the annual excuse to spend billions more or trillions more on themselves, and also sets a precedent for which I agree, increasingly socializing our country, which is what they want.
Let's go to Mark in Monroe. You're on the air, Mark.
Yeah, I can't believe for the life of me that crying Chuck Schumer isn't behind bars after recently threatening Supreme Court judges Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh in regard to abortion. Everyone heard it, including the diabolical liberal left sold-out media. And today, it's Schumer attempting to dictate to Mitch McConnell how this COVID-19 issue is going to be resolved in the Senate. I find it infuriating. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Good observation. And by the way, whatever happened to that news story? It died pretty quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, it sure did. The Democrats operate under a totally separate standard, and they get away with it because the media covers for them all the time. And it's a crying shame. But there's one thing that Senator McConnell could do in a snap, and that is to change the rules regarding these votes from 60-40 majority to a simple majority, and that would cut the Democrats out of it entirely. And I honestly think that's what he should do, because they have shown no faith. They have shown no interest in helping or contributing or being part of this solution. They have just used it every second to exploit it for their own gain. And, and the other thing that we never do, or at least the Republicans never do, I do all the time, but the Republicans in Congress never do, is call them out for all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, they should be screaming at them. Senator Cotton he's done a great job of calling attention to all this, but he's a rare bird.
The other thing we've got to thank you, Mark, for the call. And the other thing we got to point out is that we've got Senator Rand Paul, who's tested positive. We've got others that are in self-quarantine right now. I think of Mitt Romney. There's Senator Mike Lee. Senator Cory Gardner is, as well as Senator Rick Scott and Lindsey Graham. Ted Cruz, too. All in self-quarantine. So, I mean, that lessens the numbers of availability for votes in the Senate.
Yep. So that's exactly right.
Let's go to Fred in Winchester, Kentucky. You're on the air, Fred. Hello, Fred. Oh, Fred just hung up on us. Let's go to Tom in Port Wing. You're on the air.
Yes, I would like to know the opinion of flooding the president's mail, voicemail, calling the White House on putting the people back to work, children back to school, university students back to school before we tank this country. And I think it's very important that the president know we're behind him. Let's reassess the situation and put everybody back to work.
Tom, thank you for your thoughts. And he's expressing what many are here, Jim, that,
Yes.
Once you shut down all these businesses, how many will be forced to go out of business? And will the results, the consequence of the actions taken be worse than the issue itself?
Yeah, no, it's a very legitimate comment. And as I said, the president is with us on that. He does not want this. He's monitoring it daily, and he does not want this to turn into a recession or a depression. He wants us to get through it as soon as possible. And I don't know how else to manage it, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
We should be totally ignoring the Democrats. I don't know why anybody pays any attention to them at all, frankly. But he is trying to stay on top of it to avoid that very thing.
We got to take a quick break here. Jim Simpson, our guest on Crosstalk, and we'll come back to more of your phone calls. Here, the lines, again, are completely packed out, but we'll take as many calls as we can following the break. And we'll be back in just a minute here on Crosstalk on the VCY America Network. Never let a crisis go to waste.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewradio.com. Neo-Marxists in our leadership at the local, state, and federal level are taking advantage of the coronavirus. By the way, there seems to be overwhelming evidence that China deliberately allowed this to spread around the world. They did not inform the World Health Organization for over a month after they knew what was going on. They allowed people to be infected and then travel to places throughout the world. Ironically, in 1999, two communist Chinese colonels wrote a document for the People's Liberation Army entitled Unrestricted Warfare that we've discussed for years. In that document, they call for using biological weapons on America and that they could get Americans to be afraid and surrender. They talked about the fact that Americans would be psychologically damaged. Americans now are psychologically damaging and destroying our own economies with socialist plans. The coronavirus is real. The solution to the communist Chinese coronavirus is not to collapse our own economy.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. Jim Simpson, our guest here today on the program. And Jim, you were doing some looking for the quote from President Trump that really addresses that last caller.
Yeah, here it is exactly, and I'll quote it. He tweeted today at 11:50 in the morning Eastern Time, quote, "We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself. At the end of the 15-day period, we will make a decision as to which way we want to go." And to me, that's reassuring. He understands, and that's the thing that I think we need to really get here. He's paying attention to this in the way a leader should pay attention to it. What's the best way to go today? What's the best way to go tomorrow? And we will reassess every day based on new information, as opposed to the Democrats, which are saying, we want this, we want that, we want that, we want that, and we will sit on our hands until we get it. I mean, the difference couldn't be more stark than that.
Let's go back to the phone lines. Gary from Silver Point, Tennessee, you're on the air.
Yes. I was wondering, is this virus going to continue, die out and then start back next winter?
Talking to medical professionals, like Dr. David Stevens, that very much could be the case here, Gary, and that's why they continue to work on a vaccine, that is not necessarily one that is going to deal with things for the here and now. They're trying various tests. President Trump has authorized certain medications to be tried, but as far as a vaccine, that is still down the road here quite a bit. I don't, Jim, I don't know if you have any information.
Yeah, no, I mean they're working on one, and he has, of course, removed bureaucratic roadblocks for the, year, 18-month trial period with promising possibilities, which, he got pushback from the FDA bureaucracy when he did that, but he was entirely right. We have pushed that envelope many times in the past, most notably during the HIV issue, where the gay rights lobby basically arm-twisted the government to find cures or at least, symptomatic remedies very quickly. And Trump did the right thing there, and so hopefully we will see something before the end of the year, but I can't say.
Yeah. They've broken down the various agents, mapped this one out here, Gary, but they're still working on that vaccination, but that's down the road quite a bit.
And did it affect Russia?
Did it affect whom?
Russia.
Russia, I just got to see if they're on the chart, and you may know off the top of your head here, Jim.
Well, Russia, like China, is being dishonest about how many cases they have.
According to the Worldometer, they're showing 438 cases at this point.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Gary. Let's go to Dean next in Muskego, Wisconsin. You're on the air.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. My question, I guess, is a two-part question. Is it true that during the Obama administration, the stimulus package they enacted then, that they got the money from China and actually put our national park system up as collateral? And the second question would be, for the stimulus package they're trying to get going right now, do they have the money for that? And if not, where they would get it from?
Yeah, those are good questions.
Thank you.
I never heard that collateral from China thing. It's possibly true. I never heard it. My understanding of that was that it, just added to the deficit. And the thing is, it's something that I think a lot of people don't know. It added to the deficit. It boosted annual spending for the government by almost $1 trillion, and most of it went into the bureaucracy and gave a lot of pay raises to bureaucrats, something which the Democrats all want because they want all the bureaucrats to be in their camp, and they pretty much are today. What most people don't realize was that, the next year I budgeted for the federal government, and what you do when you give a one-time boost is the next year you impose what you call a non-recurring cost, which is just a way of saying we subtract out the $1 trillion boost that we gave the federal government the prior year. They never non-recurred that boost. So from then on, the government was getting another $800 million a year.
Yeah. And then they call it a cut if you would try to. Let's go to Cyrus in Sarasota, Florida. You're on the air, Cyrus.
Jim Schneider, I would like you to elaborate on what you were saying about causing entities to produce A, B, and C.
Yeah, that's dealing with the Defense Production Act that was urged to be signed for by the president, which he did sign it, but he's staying very guarded as to employing all the powers of that. So he'd have the authority to do it, Jim, but he's choosing to be restrained in that regard.
Yeah, and he could impose price controls. He could do all kinds of stuff, most of which is really not very helpful, frankly.
Thanks, Iris.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Merle, Tennessee, we got about 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Jim, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I'm not sure God's going to let us bounce back as a nation. We are more accountable than other nations because we have known the truth. We were founded on godly principles.
Yeah.
We have held the truth in unrighteousness, even as the church. And it says in Revelation 18 that the sins mounted up to heaven.
Merle, I'm out of time. Thank you for your thoughts. Certainly, it's a time of prayer and repentance as a nation, and that's something the President's called our nation to do as well. Jim, you have tell us your website here and a closing thought. We got about 20 seconds.
My website, again, is jimsimpson4congress.com, and I would ask anybody listening that wants to see strong leadership return to Congress, please consider donating. Also, I would add to that last caller, every time I give a presentation, I talk about how we have to repent and ask for God's forgiveness because we as a nation have wandered from the faith, and we will need it if we were going to
Thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.
With SRN News, I'm John Scott. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer says her state needs the federal government to provide not only more test kits and masks, but also clear guidance on how to best to fight the spread of the coronavirus. Whitmer says she's implementing a stay-at-home order to curb the spread.
We must do more to curtail community spread so our health system has a fighting chance. Today I'm issuing a stay home, stay safe executive order for all Michiganders, and it goes into effect just after midnight tonight for at least the next 3 weeks.
Meanwhile, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says states are competing with each other for ventilators and bidding up prices for supplies.
Why are we competing? Let the federal government put in place the Federal Defense Production Act. It does not nationalize any industry.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Also at srnnews.com, new concerns about the coronavirus on Capitol Hill. Bob Agnew has more in this report.
It's becoming clear members of the U.S. Senate are not immune to